In this Diablo 4 video, I'm going to be showing you the Hydra Control Sorcerer build, and this is a build that primarily focuses on using the Hydra skill as its main source of damage, but also maintains control of the battlefield via the Blizzard and Frozen Orb skills. So first up, let's take a look at the Hydra skill. This is a conjuration skill that is our primary means of DPS, and it's going to attack enemies wherever you summon on the battlefield for a certain amount of time, independent of your actions, so you're free to go about other things while it attacks them. If you take the Enhanced Hydra upgrade, it's going to deal further damage, and the Invoked Hydra upgrade will increase its attack speed when you critically strike, allowing it to deal more damage. Something that can make this build even more powerful is the Serpentine Aspect. If you get this aspect on a legendary piece of gear, it's going to allow you to summon 2 Hydras at once, which will double your damage with Hydras. Or if you get it on a 2-handed weapon like a staff, for instance, it will actually allow you to summon 2 extra Hydras, so you'll be able to summon 3, and that's what you're aiming for. So look to get this aspect on your staff and use the Occultist to slot it there if you can. So next, let's take a look at the Blizzard skill. This is a mastery skill, and this Blizzard has a huge area of effect on the battlefield, and it deals damage to enemies and continues to pour ice down onto the battlefield that continues to chill enemies over time. And we're going to intake the Enhanced Blizzard upgrade here, as well as the Wizard Blizzard upgrade, which decreases the cost of Frozen Orb while Blizzard is active, because we're going to be using Frozen Orb while Blizzard is active. But also remember that you can summon multiple Blizzards at the same time, and they stack. So if you throw out your Hydras and then cast a bunch of Blizzards, you're going to be able to freeze enemies a lot more quickly than if you just throw one Blizzard. So make sure you throw out several Blizzards before you switch to casting Frozen Orbs. Additionally, your positioning is really important for this because enemies will walk towards your Blizzard if you're standing on the other side of it. So make sure you try and keep the Blizzard between yourself, or multiple Blizzards between yourself and the enemies, so that they have to walk through your Blizzard in order to get to you. And next we come to Frozen Orb, which is our core skill. This skill is perfect for dealing with groups of enemies and able to spam it while your Blizzard is coming down and your Hydras are already out, because it's going to allow you to do an attack that will also deal damage and freeze enemies on top of the Blizzard that's chilling them away as well. And if you take the Enhanced Frozen Orb upgrade, it increases the explosion damage, which is great for this build, and the Greater Frozen Orb upgrade adds Vulnerable to enemies hit by this. Vulnerable increases the damage that enemies take by a base of 20%. You can increase this through bonuses on your gear, so you should be looking for those. But this is great in order to deal with them even more quickly. And just a note about Frozen Orb as well, because we are maxing out Frozen Orb for this build, we're taking it all the way up to 5 points, and it's going to be the primary means that we deal damage with our character, while the Hydras are the primary means the build uses damage, but they do it kind of passively after you put them out. This is the way we're going to be doing it. You're going to put this skill in your enchantment slot, because when you have it in your enchantment slot, it has a chance to cast whenever you use a non-basic skill, so you can actually cast this for free sometimes when you're using your other abilities. Moving on to other abilities we use in this build, the next one is Teleport. This is a defensive skill that allows you to teleport forward in a direction and get away from enemies most of the time. Most Sorcerer/Sorceress builds are going to have this ability in them, because it allows you mobility and positioning. So you can get away from enemies, get your Blizzards back up, get your Hydras back out, and start casting Frozen Orb again at a safe distance when enemies were on top of you before. You can upgrade this a couple of times and take the Shimmering Teleport upgrade to give you damage reduction for 5 seconds after you come out of that teleport. But you generally don't need it with this build because you have a lot of survivability anyway. But if you want more protection, you can absolutely do that. And when it comes to our basic skill, we have Frostbolt here. This deals okay damage and slows enemies. If you don't upgrade this skill at all or put anything into the passive abilities of this skill, it's basically there for a backup if you're out of mana completely and you don't have anything else you can do, so you can still get attacks off. But you generally won't use it that much because the way this build is set up, it should absolutely wipe everything out. Frostbolt is a lot better in boss scenarios where you just don't have the mana to sustain all these spells constantly, and you'll need it to attack bosses. And lastly, we come to Inferno, which is our ultimate skill, which means it has a very long cooldown. And when you upgrade this to Prime Inferno with the Prime Inferno upgrade, it will actually pull enemies towards the center of it, which is great for this build, because if you cast Inferno, group enemies up, then throw your Frozen Orb in there or cast Blizzard down on top of them, they're going to freeze really easily in a nice little ball for you. When that Frozen Orb, all those Frozen Orbs explode, they're going to deal damage all over those enemies that you grouped up really nicely. So that wraps up our active skills, but I want to talk about one passive skill that's really good for this build, and just generally Sorcerer and Sorceress builds in particular, which is Glass Cannon. This was one we actually used in our Immortal Lightning build as well, but it increases the damage that you deal by 6% per point, but increases the damage you take by 3%. This is really good because Sorcerers have good mobility with Teleport, and they have a lot of barriers they can do and things like that. And generally speaking, the best defense is a good offense here. If you wipe enemies out quickly enough, they can't touch you. So getting that extra damage is actually very good for this build, and I highly recommend taking Glass Cannon. So talking about legendary aspects for this build that are good for this, the first one is Aspect of Protector. This gives you a barrier whenever you attack an elite enemy for 10 seconds every 30 seconds. This is great on just about any build in the beta, particularly good here. If you get the Conceited Aspect as well, this allows you to deal increased damage when you have a barrier active. Sorcerers have ice armor also that can give them a barrier, so if you slotted that somewhere, you can get a barrier on command, besides the Aspect of Protector. But this is good whether you have ice armor or you have Aspect of Protector or both. And then finally, you have Aspect of the Deflecting Barrier. And this is, while you have a barrier active, there's a 20% chance to ignore incoming direct damage from distant enemies. So this allows you to shrug off some damage while you have a barrier up, which is going to be a lot of the time if you have something like Ice Armor and Aspect of Protector, but it'll still happen pretty frequently with Aspect of Protector. Other legendary aspects that are really good for this build are Aspect of the Umbral, which restores mana whenever you crowd control an enemy. This is really good because you're constantly crowd controlling enemies in a big group with Blizzard and Frozen Orb, so you'll get that mana back, allow you to keep your thing going. And another aspect that's really good for this build is Aspect of Control that allows you to deal more damage to immobilized, stunned, or frozen enemies. Because you're constantly freezing enemies with this build, this is just more damage for you to have. That wraps up our Hydra Control Sorcerer build. If you have any more questions, make sure you leave them in the comments below. I hope you guys have enjoyed these builds. I don't think we're going to have time to get any more before we get into Druid and Necromancer. But you can expect Druid and Necromancer builds coming up this weekend. I'm going to try and get them out as quickly as possible. For those of you who had questions about those classes, you can look forward to that.